And so that if you see someone with a very serious health condition stand up in front of an audience of 550 people and tell their story about how they had, over time, created, by mismanaging their emotions and their energy, created a disease, and became conscious of how it happened, and then it took them 2 years to turn that battleship around, and every day, every single day, they made the choice to not get up from their meditation until they were somebody else. You're talking about greatness now, because this is no longer a philosophical concept. This is a person who is embodying it every single day. And they understand they're their own genetic engineer when they can get up in an elevated state. They understand when they do something differently or think differently or act differently, they're unfiring and unwiring, and they're selecting new networks of neurons and signaling new genes. They're assigning meaning to what they're doing. And if people can understand the what and the why, the how gets easier. So if you see somebody stand up in front of an audience of 500 people and explain their journey, it's no different than you watching somebody hit a tennis ball like Serena Williams, and you play tennis. If you keep watching, you are going to hit a tennis ball better. And we have people in our workshops stand up in front of audiences and tell their story. And it begins to give people permission to understand that it's possible for them to do the same. And just like an infection creates a disease amongst the community, I believe that health and wellness can be as infectious as disease once you get a group of people together that understand what they're doing and why.
This is a good time to talk about some of the people that came up,
Sure.
Like this, and maybe touch on, for some it might take 2 years, for some it might take 3 weeks.
There was a woman who handed me an envelope as I was walking off the stage in Barcelona a few years back, and she asked me to read it. And I went into the green room, and I opened the envelope, and I read this woman's story, and it was so profound that I had her come in front of the entire audience of 500 people and tell the story. She's a psychotherapist from Holland, a very intelligent woman, and on a Sunday morning, while she was in the shower, her husband said goodbye to his 2 children, yelled something to her while she was in the shower, and then went to the tallest building in Amsterdam and jumped off the building and committed suicide. Now, that is a stressful event. And when she got the news, she experienced all the emotions that people experience from something that's shocking and traumatic like that. She was suffering, she was in pain, she was resentful, she was guilty, she was confused, she was angry. She went through the whole gamut of emotions. And all of those emotions, by the way, are derived from the hormones of stress. So she has an event in her life, it changes her biologically. She doesn't know how to control her emotional reaction, it turns into a mood, one long emotional reaction. If you keep reviewing that event in your mind, you begin to produce the same chemistry in your brain and body as if the event was occurring. So her body is being conditioned to the past because she's reliving the experience 50 to 100 times in a day, and her body is beginning to believe it's in the same past experience over and over again. It ultimately goes from a mood to a temperament, and now people are asking her in her life, why are you so upset? She tells the story, and she's basically saying, I am this way because of this event that happened to me 4 months ago. So then, if we keep that going for extended periods of time, and those emotions are driving our thoughts, and we can't think greater than how we feel, our feelings have become the means of thinking, we're thinking in the past, and now we're stuck in our biology. So one day she wakes up, and she's completely paralyzed from her waist down. And she can't get out of bed, so they rush her to the hospital, they do MRIs, they do all the tests. They can't find anything significant with her, so they just diagnose her with neuritis. And so now she's bedridden, and she cannot literally get out of bed. So now she can't work, she can't take care of her children, her mother has to move in with her, and she doesn't have any money because she's not working, and her stress levels go up. So now the condition gets worse. As her stress levels go up, it's the same chemicals of stress that are knocking the brain and body out of balance, signaling the wrong genes in the wrong way. And another few months later, she develops these huge ulcerations in all the mucous membranes of her body, in her mouth, her throat, her upper stomach, her bladder, her vagina, her anus. She's got these huge ulcers. Now she can't eat, and if she can't eat, she's knocking her body now out of chemical balance even more, and it hurts. So now she's spiraling downward, and then she finally starts noticing her symptoms getting worse, and she goes to the doctor, and they diagnose her with esophageal cancer. Now, the moment she gets the diagnosis of esophageal cancer, now she gets even more stressed, and she's in fear now, and she realizes that her children may not have a mom. And so she came to one of our workshops, and I remember specifically because she came in with crutches in a wheelchair and a walker, and she sat on the left side of the room. And it was an introductory level course, and she understood that she could change it intellectually, but she had a very big challenge ahead of her, and she realized how much she was in her past. And so, but she was excited about the content and the information. Now remember, she's a psychotherapist, so this is the language that she understands. So she flew a few months later to an event that we did in Connecticut, just north of New York City. And she came with two friends, and the audience was amazing in this retreat. And so I pushed the audience a little further than where they normally would go, and she had a breakthrough. For the first time, she felt like herself in over a year. And she had a vision of her future. Like she wasn't visualizing anything, she just got a very clear vision. And she was so excited that she went home and she did her meditation every single day. Now, she understood that she had to upregulate new genes and downregulate genes that had to do with her disease, and that every day she had to knock on the genetic door. Now, the first thing I want to say is that I'm certain that there were days that she didn't feel like doing her meditation, and she did that anyway. She did it anyway. There were days where she had a tremendous amount of doubt, and she didn't think it was possible, but she did her meditations every single day. And as she began to do her meditations every single day, she started to notice significant changes in her health. Well, she stood on the stage in front of that audience, and she said, "I just came from my doctor last week. I have no evidence of esophageal cancer. I have no ulcerations in any of the mucous membranes of my body, except a small scar in the back of my throat. I have no paralysis, no numbness, no loss of motor function, and I have a new husband." And I said, "New personality, new personal reality. The disease exists in the old personality. You're literally someone else." And I said, "When you look back at that event that took place in your past, how do you feel?" And she said, "It was my greatest teacher." And I said, "Do you have any emotion when you think about that event?" And she said, "No." And I said, "The memory without the emotional charge is called wisdom, and that's the name of the game here. You're ready for a new life." And she said, "I'm so in love with my life." But she made the choice to not get up from her meditations until she was in love with life. Now, to the materialist, to the person who's defining reality with their senses, they would say she has no reason to be in love with life. She lost her husband to suicide, she lost her job, she can't take care of her kids, she's paralyzed, she has cancer, she has all these different conditions. But she made the choice then that every single day she was going to condition her body into the future instead of into the past. And she stood in front of that audience and she said, "I am so in love with life." And I said, "Of course you are. You created your life from the place called being in love with life." So, because of her and the choices that she made to overcome herself and not be defined by the past, and working on it every single day she overcame some aspect of herself, a little bit more. surrendered an aspect of her limited self to create a greater self, to remove the masks and the emotions and the facade that block the flow of the intelligence within us. When every day she was making contact with that power within her, sooner or later it began to get the right instructions, and she went from being a very sick person to a very healthy person. So that person to me is a light to the world. To me, she's closer to the truth than any scholar or any academic. She lived it. And other people, as a result of it, with ovarian cancers and other conditions, have heard her story, and they've given them the strength, to do the same in their lives. So,
you touched on there was days that she didn't feel like it. There was days, but she did it. So how do you fight through the pain?
This is a great question because, again, we can talk about the philosophy of all of this, but when you're sick, the most difficult part about being sick is being able to think greater than how you feel. And if you can't think greater than how you feel, then your body is dictating your life. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, but let's just say that a person has mismanaged their energy and mismanaged their emotions and mismanaged their lifestyle for the last 10 years. And ultimately they develop some type of condition. Well, it was the continuous imbalance that was knocking on the genetic door that finally programmed the gene into sickness. So if it took them 10 years to finally create that condition, then we have to be real here and understand that it's going to take some time to knock on the genetic door and begin to reprogram the gene in a new way. So it's not like you do your meditation 2 days and you expect to be healed. That it's a process and it's a skill, and it requires repetition, and it requires understanding, and requires regrouping and relearning, and requires filling your brain with knowledge, and it requires staying consistent with it to begin to see some effects. And it's just like catching a fish. The moment you hook one, the moment you notice some change in your body, the moment something begins to change, that's all you need. Because once you get that feeling, that sensation, you're going to correlate what you're doing inside of you with the effect that you produce outside of you. And you're going to start doing it with more passion and more sincerity and more absolute certainty. So the cool thing about all of this is that, let's just say you're able to change your brain waves and get beyond your analytical mind because you've been practicing your meditation every single day. And let's say that you reach that elegant moment of the generous present moment, the now, where you forget about your appointments, you forget about your relationships, you forget about all the things you did yesterday. You're so present in the moment that you're not a face any longer, that you're not a body, that you're not an identity, that you don't own anything. You're pure consciousness. That's the moment your consciousness merges with a greater consciousness. And that is the moment when your conscious mind begins to merge with your subconscious mind, that you're in the operating system where true change can take place. So if you're practicing overcoming your body every single day in a meditation, and you're sick, then when you sit down in your meditation, you should be able to get beyond your awareness of being a body. And if you're able to do that, then your body is no longer the mind, and you can begin to work with your body and recondition it to a new mind. If you don't have the ability to get beyond your body in a meditation, then you're your body trying to change your body. You're matter trying to change matter, and it produces very slow effects over time. Now, it will produce some effects, but it's going to take some time. So then if you're practicing your ability to regulate and change your brainwaves and get beyond your body, get beyond your identity, get beyond space and time. If you do that really well, when it comes time for you to heal your body and you have the ability to get beyond your body, no matter how sick it is, every time you get beyond your body, you are consciousness with a certain energy instructing your body, not from the body, but from an epiphenomenological place, which is greater than your body. So I think that, again, to demystify the process, it requires some training. When people start getting to that point where they get beyond themselves, that's when the magic happens over and over again. So yeah, in the beginning, it's going to be difficult because you're in a body, and then you start doing the meditations, and then you look to see, am I any better? The moment you start looking to see if you're better, you've just returned back to the old self. The new self would never look to see if it was better. It's already staying in that state. So it's a process. It's a process of development. It's a process of action. It's a process of awareness. It's a process. It takes time. But we've seen it so many times now that I can say now it's becoming a law.
So talk to me about the placebo effect.
So how is it that you can give someone a sugar pill, a saline injection, or perform some false surgery or treatment, and a certain percentage of those people will accept, believe, and surrender to the thought that they're getting the actual substance or treatment, and they begin to program their autonomic nervous system to make their own pharmacy of chemicals that matches the exact same chemical they think they're taking. So the question is it the inert substance that's doing the healing, or is it the body's innate capacity to heal? The sugar pill, the inert substance, is not doing the healing. It's the thought that's doing the healing. But that pill, based on conditioning, is a symbol that represents possibility in someone's future. We can call that an intent. A certain percentage of those people will begin to become inspired, enthusiastic, and theos, filled with God. They'll begin to become hopeful. They'll begin to give thanks that it could possibly work. And all they're doing is combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion. And in that moment, they're moving from the biology of their past into the biology of their future. So then, the question is, do you need the sugar pill or the saline injection or some false treatment to move into a new state of being? But instead of selecting a known in your life to help you heal, can you select an unknown, a new potential in the quantum field without anything outside of you, and begin to revisit that unknown over and over again until you make it known in your biology? Is it possible that you'll begin to produce the same effects? And the answer is absolutely yes. So in depression studies, where people are given a placebo, 81% of the people that are given a placebo respond as well to the placebo as they would to an antidepressant. So what's the significance of that? It means they're making their own pharmacy of antidepressants, and their body and nervous system is the greatest pharmacist in the world. So then, yeah, it's true that the people in the depression studies had to take the placebo for 6 or 8 weeks. And every day, combining a clear intention and elevated emotion, moving into a new state of being, accepting, believing, and surrendering to the idea, the thought, that they're getting the real substance, began to program their biology to change. So if it takes 6 weeks to heal depression by moving into a new state of being, it may be a good idea to understand it may take you 6 to 8 weeks by moving into a new state of being every single day to finally change some condition within you. So then, the beauty behind the placebo is that it's based on belief. And most people's beliefs are created from past experiences. So you have an experience or series of experiences in your life that brand you neurologically and emotionally condition you. And we tend to think and feel within the biology of our past experiences. So if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, if you combine a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, a thought and a feeling, that's called an attitude. You have a series of good thoughts that are connected to a series of good feelings, you have a good attitude. You have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to some bad feelings, you have a bad attitude. So attitudes are kind of shortened states of being. Good attitude in the morning, bad attitude in the afternoon. If you take attitudes, 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 and you string them together, you start creating a belief. So a belief, then, is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again till you hardwire it in your brain. And the very boundaries of our beliefs are our feelings. And when our beliefs get challenged, it typically doesn't feel right. So then, if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, and the repetition of thinking and feeling over time conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind, then all beliefs are subconscious states of being. People don't even know they have beliefs about medicine or about God or about relationships or about love or about gender because they've been programmed subconsciously. If you take beliefs and you string beliefs together, a belief, you form what's called perceptions. And perceptions have everything to do with the choices we make, the things we create in our life, the relationships we have, and even the behaviors that we demonstrate. And in fact, if you want to study someone's beliefs, study their behaviors, because they'll tell you volumes of information about themselves. So then, if you're programmed into believing that you need something outside of you to heal, then that becomes your belief. And of course, you're going to need something to help you to heal. If you believe that you need a flu shot so that you don't get the flu, well, the fact that you're believing that you need the flu shot, whether you get the flu shot or not, you're more than likely going to get sick anyway. So when I wrote The Placebo, I was so fascinated with the concept because I began to realize how programmed we really are unconsciously. When you start studying the placebo, you begin to realize that there are so many studies to prove over and over again that it is in fact our innate ability to heal. If you take a group of people that have asthma and you have a drug that induces asthma and you have a drug that takes it away, and you give the person the drug that induces asthma, and you tell them that you're giving them the drug that takes the asthma away, more than half of those people will not have a response to the bronchial constrictor. In other words, the thought was more powerful than the chemical. So then, if people begin to unravel this concept, and they begin to realize that they have the innate capacity to heal, and that they can work by changing and regulating their internal states, they're going to begin to produce their own pharmacy of chemicals for pain, for depression, for antibodies or inflammation. And we did an amazing study just a little ways back in Tacoma, Washington at one of our advanced workshops. We took 120 people and we wanted to measure their circulating cortisol levels and a chemical called immunoglobulin A, or IgA. So when you're stressed and you're out of balance, your cortisol levels go up. And cortisol levels are the highest at around 8 in the morning. So we selected a specific time in the afternoon to measure 120 people's cortisol levels when they came to our advanced workshop. We got the measurements, and we measured their IgA levels as well. We put them through 4.5 days of training, and at the end of 4.5 days, we measured to see if there were any epigenetic changes or chemical changes that took place by their internal work. We found that the majority of people's cortisol levels diminished, which means they were no longer in survival, they were no longer stressed. But the relevant thing that happened was that their IgA levels went from about 51.5 to 83, right to the ceiling of what's considered high, and some people were up in the hundreds. Now, IgA is the primary defense against bacteria and viruses. It's greater than any flu shot. And when